It's playoff time. Hi again, everybody. Cowboys are back with you here. As you can see behind me, we were talking about the NHL playoffs that kicked off Wednesday night with the three matchups of the Rangers and Penguins, the Blackhawks and Blues, and the Tampa Bay Lightning visiting the Detroit Red Wings here. And those are all first-round matchups that were played on Wednesday. We'll get to all the matchups coming up in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about the West. The big series in the West, I believe it is going to be the Blues and the Hawks. The Blues and the Hawks hate each other, have the most hated rivalry, I think, in this playoffs. And it's going to be one heck of a series as the Hawks are missing a couple of the key players as they got their goalie, Carl Crawford, back on Saturday, who did not put on a performance, as now they got the big Duncan Keith, as if you were watching, you remember what he did to the Wild's Charlie Coyle. Flung his stick, hit him in the nose, and almost broke his nose. He was suspended for 5 games. He'll be back for Game 2, so it's going to be interesting how we see him for Game 1 sets up, if the Blues can capitalize on that. And I just think whoever scores the most and plays less mistake hockey is going to win that series. The Blues and Hawks, always a great rivalry. I hate to see it only in the first round, though, so it's going to be very sad when it's over in the first round. Also in the West, these are all in the West, the Stars and the Wild. Stars are Central Division champions as they clinched number 1 seed in the West, and I believe the Wild are no match for the Stars. Stars are too much overpowered with their young team they got, and Wild missing a couple of their key players. Zach Parise is one very key player. He's like their captain. So I believe that the Stars and Wild will come down to the Stars maybe in 5, maybe in 4, depending on that. And also we got the Kings and the Sharks. Each team evenly matched, as I don't see this going about 6 games or so in the first round, as both these teams coming off great wins on Saturday night, getting ready for the on their playoff tune-up. I think the Kings are going to prevail. They just got too much more of star power than the Sharks. Got 1 or 2 guys, but 1 or 2 guys ain't going to cut it when you got about a whole line for the Kings and a couple lines for the Kings that make it another series. And also the Ducks and the Predators. The Ducks, number 2 seed in the West, are taking on the Nashville Predators. But I believe the Ducks are going to win it all. Are going to win at least the first round, because the Predators are no match. The Predators barely got in, just like the Wild did, to take on the Dallas Stars. So as the Ducks will move on as well to the next round, we'll preview those matchups. Well, now let's talk about the East matchups. You got the old rivalry in the East. The Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Rangers. Teams hate each other. It's also great when you see rivalries in this hockey get going, as they will play each other. They play each other Wednesday night. We'll have a score for you tomorrow. We'll have a score for you at the bottom of the screen, popping up as you see right there, in just a few. You see right there. As also Tampa Bay and Detroit, a rematch of last year's series where Tampa Bay knocked out Detroit to move on, as Tampa moved on to the Eastern Conference Finals, but couldn't prevail over the New York Rangers, as New York Rangers move on to Stanley Cup, but could not prevail as well. Panthers and Islanders. The surprising team on this side is the Panthers. Panthers last year and the years before were not even playoff contention, playoff talks. It was about regrouping and rebuilding, as no one thought they would even be here this year. So I think as they were a team that no one thought would make the playoffs or do anything this year, but they are facing off against the Islanders coming up, I believe, on Friday night in Brooklyn. As also, we got the number 1 seed who has the most points this year in the NHL. The Washington Capitals will take on, who barely squeaked in and went down to the last day of the regular season, was the Philadelphia Flyers, as they took on, there had some scenarios. Detroit had to win, and Boston, Detroit and Boston had to lose, but Detroit won, they got in. So it came down to Boston and Philadelphia. If Boston lost, Philadelphia got in. If Boston won, Boston got in. So Philadelphia won, took care of business, knocked Boston out of the playoffs for the first time in a couple years. So, and Boston will be sitting at home watching it on their television for the first, like I said, first time. But I'm surprised. The Flyers, it's going to be no match. The Capitals maybe go at 5, but I doubt they're going to get, Flyers going to get any more than 1 win or even making a series. The Capitals are too big or too star powered and have more in the tank than I believe the Flyers do. to win this playoffs and maybe even the Stanley Cup. As now we'll go to the second round matchups. As I said, we got the Stars and the Blues. Stars and the Blues. I think the Hawks. Not this year. I don't believe so. So Stars and Blues. I believe the Stars. I believe the Blues and Stars are gonna be another. They're also another division matchup. So, but I think the Stars can't come out, overpower the Blues, and make it to the conference finals. And in between the Kings and the Ducks have more advantage. They have more, like I said, even more star power, and they're just too quick and very young. So I think the Ducks prevail in that. Out of New York, in the Rangers and Pittsburgh, I believe that the Pittsburgh Penguins can do it this year. They have one of the best plays. They have one of the best players in Sidney Crosby, and that can lead this team onto a very successful run in the postseason. It's going to be one of the great series, but I think Pittsburgh moves on. Tampa, like I said, will beat Detroit. It could be like the Flyers, maybe not even one game or so. So I believe that the Capitals will also move on will beat the Flyers, and the Panthers are going to move on to play. If the Islanders have the talent, but I believe the Panthers are right there with them to make it. Maybe even that could go 6 or 7 games, folks. So don't sleep on that series. It's gonna be a very interesting series to get the playoffs started. And then I believe the Stars the Ducks come out of the West. Like I said, Stars are too young. They're gonna have their opportunity, but I think the Ducks come out of the West, and I believe the Capitals come out of the East. So it'll be a Ducks Capitals Stanley Cup, and I do think the Ducks win it all. As I don't think the Capitals have what it takes, but the Ducks are too young and too quick. So the Ducks are my pick to win the Stanley Cup as well. Well, thank you for joining us here. Next week we preview the NBA playoffs and review some of the games that have already happened. That'll be next Thursday right here on Kyle Sports Rant.